You know, Mr. Wilkerson, we're going to be neighbors for a long time. It's up to you whether or not we live in peace. I came here to stop this killing before it went any further.
The legendary Glenn Ford of Hollywood passed away in his mansion, penniless and forgotten. After having stroke after stroke, the $12 million earning guy who dated Marilyn Monroe spent his last years hardly able to move. His son seldom ever visited. His ex-wives stole everything, and the horrifying truth that no one knew was exposed by the secret diaries that were discovered after his death. This is the tragic tale that Hollywood doesn't want you to know, from movie star to lonely elderly guy. On May 1st, 1916, Glenn Ford was born in Quebec City, Canada. His family had a long history in Canada, and his real name was Guillaume Samuel Newton Ford. His great-uncle was Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first Prime Minister, and his father was a railroad executive. Glenn's quiet strength, which would eventually contribute to his on-screen attractiveness, came from his heritage. People could still discern a hint of the quiet, reticent personality that he inherited from his northern upbringing, even after he rose to fame in Hollywood. Glenn's family relocated to Santa Monica, California when he was 7 years old. His life began to alter at that point. He attended that high school, where he discovered his passion for performing in the classroom and school productions. Although he wasn't very showy, some people characterized him as shy and maybe a little awkward. There was something sincere about him. He wasted no time after graduating. He immediately began working in theater, doing small-scale shows all around California, and even trying his hand at Broadway. He persisted in moving stealthily in the direction of an unrealized dream. These formative years laid the groundwork for a career spanning more than 100 films and 50 years. But Glenn was passionate about more than just acting. His father had agreed that he may pursue his acting career as long as he first acquired practical skills. That counsel was taken seriously by Glenn. He acquired abilities that most Hollywood celebrities wouldn't even consider: wiring electricity, repairing plumbing, and building houses. Even when he was most famous, he would be hammering together a roof or repairing the air conditioner at home. He was truly skilled at it, and he wasn't just doing it for show. If acting hadn't been his thing, he may have become a constructor. He had a practical side that was uncommon in Hollywood and helped him stay grounded while others got lost. The path to fame wasn't easy, though. Glenn landed his first significant motion picture part in Heaven with a Barbed Wire Fence in 1939. However, what ought to have been a moment of pride devolved into something terrible when Ricardo Cortez, the director, humiliated him on set by making fun of his performance in front of everyone. "A mistake," he said. "Glenn should never have been cast. It was brutal, public, and indelible, and it broke him." While most actors would have left, Glenn stayed. Despite that sorrow, he continued to move forward, proving Cortez incorrect in each subsequent assignment. He was hardened by that early humiliation rather than broken. Later that year, a significant event occurred. Glenn earned a 7-year contract with Columbia Pictures after being discovered by talent scout Tom Kahn. Even though his name didn't fit the Hollywood template, Glenn had something that Columbia desired, which was significant because they often didn't keep performers under contract. Studio head Harry Cohn claimed that Gwen Ford wouldn't fly, so he adopted the name Glenn Ford, which was derived from his father's hometown. The studio had already transformed Harriet Lake into Anne Sheridan and Margarita Cancino into Rita Hayworth. Glenn knew the game, therefore he didn't resist it. He was also paired with William Holden, another newcomer at that time. In 1939, when William Holden and Glenn Ford signed with Columbia Pictures, studio head Harry Cohn had one goal in mind: mayhem. He believed he would have more control if two ambitious young actors engaged in a fierce fight over every role. However, the plan blew up in his face. Ford and Holden became best friends rather than rivals. They exchanged jokes, anecdotes, and even tips for the audition, such as putting paper in their shoes to make them appear taller. Their relationship would endure for more than 40 years, until Holden passed away in 1981. They were meant to compete, but instead, they became two of Columbia's most talented individuals. Ford did not begin with successful blockbusters. He labored through Columbia's never-ending supply of B-movies, which are low-budget productions designed to fill up double features. Ford made his Columbia debut in My Son is Guilty, following a tiny appearance at Fox. Then came unmemorable names like The Sensational Baby Ring for Sale, Men Without Souls, and Convicted Woman. Ford portrayed a reporter attempting to uncover an illicit baby-selling ring in that one. It was loud, rough, and designed to stun. He learned a lot from these unglamorous jobs, including timing, presence, and pacing. Instead of receiving acclaim, he received practice. Behind the scenes, Ford was making headlines while honing his craft. He developed a passionate relationship with Rita Hayworth on the set of The Lady in Question. Ford was also associated with Evelyn Keyes at the same time, so their chemistry wasn't limited to that. Harry Cohn, the studio's head, even bugged their dressing rooms in an attempt to shut everything down. It was unsuccessful. They were tipped off by Ford-loyal technicians, and the affairs went on behind closed doors. Ford's own son would later disclose that his father had thorough records of more than 146 lovers, many of whom were his co-stars. He even began surreptitiously recording his own phone conversations, turning into the very man he had previously had to outsmart. His on-screen personas started to shine as his off-screen life remained dramatic. Ironically, Ford and Holden shared a breakthrough role in Texas. Next followed Columbia's first Technicolor movie, The Desperado. It was significant, particularly for a studio that was once regarded as inferior. Ford was a fast-moving criminal who just missed a heist at a bank. It was vibrant, boisterous, and bustling. Fans and critics recognized who stole the show, despite Randolph Scott receiving the highest billing. Ford's charismatic and tough performance demonstrated that he was prepared for greater things. However, just as it appeared that everything was coming together, Ford left. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to serve. He enlisted in the Coast Guard Auxiliary and later the Marines despite a deferment. He didn't take any shortcuts after Pearl Harbor. He served, trained, and eventually found employment in the film section of the Marines. He contributed to the creation of public service announcements and training videos there. He even collaborated on a radio program during the war with Tyrone Power. On December 7, 1944, precisely 3 years after Pearl Harbor, Glenn Ford was finally released from the Navy after nearly 3 years of service and excruciating stomach ulcers. Despite not experiencing direct combat, he received multiple service medals in recognition of his achievements. Ford did not, however, completely abandon the military. Long into the Vietnam War, he remained in the Naval Reserve and rose to the rank of captain. But upon his return to Hollywood, he was merely another forgotten actor attempting to make a comeback. That was altered when Bette Davis selected him to co-star with her in A Stolen Life. Twin sisters arguing over the same man was portrayed by Davis. Both critics and viewers were enthralled with Ford's character. All of a sudden, Ford stopped making low-budget movies. Then came Gilda, the part that really made him famous. Ford, who was alongside Rita Hayworth, captivated the audience with his quiet passion. Their off-screen relationship, which would last intermittently for decades, reflected their on-screen connection. Every look and tight moment they shared felt genuine and unfiltered. In addition to advancing his career, Gilda helped him establish a reputation as a man who could stand at the side of Hollywood's most influential women. Ford didn't have to be ostentatious or noisy. What he didn't say was what made him strong. He steered clear of big shows, unlike the majority of prominent men of the era. He valued subtlety, believing that a glance or a little silence might convey more information than a lengthy speech. Critics occasionally questioned his reserve, but audiences adored it. This quiet assurance became his signature and earned him the moniker King of Cool. His characters had a sense of realism. They were guys you could trust, not invincible heroes. From the 1940s through the 1960s, he was one of the most bankable celebrities because of his honesty. In The Big Heat, he played a detective whose wife is killed in a car bomb intended for him, elevating his cool, restrained approach to a new level. Ford made his retaliation feel very personal by allowing the pain to simmer beneath the surface rather than going overboard. In one particularly memorable scene, he teams up with Gloria Graham's character, a disfigured woman, to apprehend the guilty culprits. Because neither character had anything left to lose, their encounters together were intense and emotional. Ford gave one of his best and most unvarnished performances. Blackboard Jungle followed. Ford portrayed a former soldier who is now a teacher dealing with a group of aggressive youngsters. Ford was first exposed to Bill Haley's Rock Around the Clock, which starts the picture, by his rock and roll loving son. The film's soundtrack was just as shocking as its plot. Teenagers danced in the aisles while the record played. The song reached the top of the charts, and rock music became widely popular. Cities outlawed the movie, senators argued its impact, and theaters prepared for mayhem. But Ford once again served as the center of a cultural storm. Ford redefined the Western villain in 3:10 to Yuma. He portrayed an outlaw named Ben Wade with surprising nuance and charm, to the point where viewers were cheering him on. Such a multi-layered opponent was uncommon in 1950s Westerns, and Ford executed it with ease and without going overboard. Ford produced over 24 Westerns throughout the years, earning a reputation that rivaled that of John Wayne. But Ford's heroes were tentative, fallible, and human, whereas Wayne's were larger than life. His movie presence was typified by his credo of "say less, mean more," which he jokingly said he preferred when eliminating lines from his screenplays. Ford was more than just an actor. Having learnt to ride from actual cowboys, he executed many of his own feats. He barely avoided a stampede while rescuing a crew member and sustained broken ribs during a land rush incident, yet he never gave up. For Ford, Westerns were a way of life rather than merely a genre. Ford portrayed a modest shopkeeper with a dangerous past in The Fastest Gun Alive. His performance struck a balance between pride and guilt, competence and dread. The locals and spectators held their breath till he eventually pulled out his revolver. Then followed the twisty Western, The Sheepman. Ford portrayed a sheep farmer who causes issues by wandering into cattle land. He added charm and fun to the movie, making people laugh without compromising realism. Scenes with a young Leslie Nielsen created suspense, while his relationship with Shirley MacLaine contributed romance. The popularity of the movie demonstrated that Ford could do well in Westerns that were both serious and humorous. Glenn Ford was always the silent hero, the good guy, the trustworthy friend, the dependable everyman. But behind closed doors, he lived a hidden life so intricate that nobody was suspicious, not even his wives, friends, or lovers. Ford's son Peter found diaries that were anything but typical after his death in 2006. From 1945, when he filmed Gilda, they were meticulous, daily logs of every love experience Ford had ever had. His affair with Rita Hayworth started at that point. He began recording every conquest at that point, including every name, place, and detail. Ford documented interactions with 146 women, almost all of whom were actresses, over a 40-year period. He documented entire scenarios, including what transpired, where it occurred, his feelings, and even his rating of each connection, rather than only noting names. The most startling was a one-night encounter with Marilyn Monroe on his couch in Beverly Hills, which Peter later put up for sale. For 40 years he had his longest affair with Hayworth. He once purchased the property next door and constructed a special gate so he could enter covertly. He was so dedicated to keeping things secret. He was also obsessed with covert recording equipment. He set up a system in his house in 1946, not to spy on others, but to monitor Eleanor Powell, his wife. He recorded their phone talks, including ones with his kid, out of fear that she would find out about his escapades. Following Glenn's passing, one reel with the title Peter's Conversations came to light. He recorded everything out of paranoia, but he kept it a secret. Hollywood was shocked when the tapes and diaries came to light. Neither lovers nor friends knew. The more Peter dug, the stranger the revelations got. Liz Renee, a cult actress, once listed Ford as one of her top 5 lovers. This information was also recorded in his journals, most likely with a grade. Peter claims that the diaries were so detailed that he was able to determine the exact time, location, and manner of each contact as well as Ford's feelings following each. It was a private museum of memories that was well maintained. But hidden bedrooms weren't the only thing in Ford's existence. Serving in the military was his other obsession. Ford participated in World War II and then made trips to Vietnam from 1966 to 1968, in contrast to many other celebrities who posed for the troops. He participated in 5 clandestine operations, walked battle zones, scouting film locations, and embedded with Marine troops. "They asked me to go and I went," he recalled. The United States awarded him numerous awards: Vietnam, the Navy, and France's Légion d'honneur in 1992. He was the only actor from Hollywood to serve in both the American Green Berets and the French Foreign Legion. When Ford woke up as a recruit in 1952 after a drunken night in France, it was an odd Legion enrollment. The film's producer had to negotiate his release over the course of 4 tense days to avoid production stopping and hundreds of jobs being lost. Ford's personal life was as dramatic off-screen as his movies. He wed Eleanor Powell, the rising star of MGM, in 1944. In order to become a wife and mother to their son Peter, she sacrificed her profession. However, Ford's infidelity weakened their marriage following World War II and his breakthrough in Gilda. After years of deception, Eleanor filed for divorce in 1959, with little left over when Peter turned 14. Fans welcomed her back to Las Vegas, where she rebuilt her life. Ford wedded 3 additional times. Each marriage was brief and costly because of alimony. Catherine Hayes, his second wife, left after 3 years. Cynthia Hayward, his third, left after 7, and Jean Baudot, his last, left after less than a year. By 1993, Ford was mostly alone after his son and ex-wives had moved out. In addition, he had a lifelong resentment of Ricardo Cortez. Ford approached Cortez in a posh restaurant years after that embarrassing early encounter. He never really forgave the anguish of being physically prevented from striking the man who had earlier shattered his spirit. Ford switched to television in the 1970s. At a period when Americans mistrusted institutions, he made his breakthrough with the bold movie The Brotherhood of the Bell, which explored hidden societies and corruption. He was labeled insane after playing a professor who exposed the Brotherhood. Ford referred to it as his favorite assignment because, in a time of distrust, its message resonated. Because of his accomplishment, CBS offered him a series called Cade's County. In a 1-season series with Martin Sheen and William Shatner as guest performers, he turned into a gruff sheriff. He followed it up with a mini-series called Once an Eagle and kept finding consistent TV employment to keep the money coming in. Ford made his Superman debut in 1978 as Clark's father, Jonathan Kent. Despite having little on-screen time, his quiet strength, particularly his death on screen, made a deep impression and influenced the hero's moral compass. The Library of Congress eventually preserved the movie, which became a classic. Ford stayed away from Hollywood indulgences despite spending decades in front of the camera. His over $12 million fortune, about $18 million now, was not wasted. He lived simply and made wise real estate investments, most notably a 22-room home in Beverly Hills in 1946. From the 1950s to the 1990s, he worked non-stop, preferring to be consistent rather than chase big hits. By 1991, Ford's health had deteriorated. His body was debilitated by a succession of minor strokes, but his intellect remained clear. He wrote to admirers and watched vintage movies at home most days in the early 2000s. He was too sick to attend a tribute for his 90th birthday in 2006 at the Egyptian Theater. Paramedics attempted to resuscitate him in his Beverly Hills home at 3:47 p.m. on August 30, 2006, 4 months later, but it was too late. The stars of Hollywood gathered for his funeral. A sincere homage was sent by Martin Scorsese. At his desire, Ford was buried in Santa Monica alongside his parents while wearing his uniform from the French Foreign Legion. A long and complex life came to a peaceful and respectable end. More than 50 television shows and more than 100 films carry on Glenn Ford's legacy. His ability to communicate so much with so little was what made him unique, not his ostentatious speech or extravagant gestures. An entire scene might be conveyed by a single look or a change in his mouth. Whether he was a gunman in 310 to Yuma, a conflicted teacher in Blackboard Jungle, or a tough officer in The Big Heat, he inspired viewers to believe in his characters. Ford moved fluidly between comedies, dramas, westerns, and noir, while others committed to just one genre. Directors like Tarantino and Scorsese adored him, while younger actors like Steve McQueen and Clint Eastwood studied him. In addition to acting, Glenn Ford introduced the world to a new manner of being on screen.